When most people look at Dante, they see the red coat, the enormous sword, the twin pistols, and the effortless confidence of a man who treats every battle like a performance. He jokes while demons attempt to kill him, turns impossible fights into entertainment, and rarely allows an enemy to believe that it has frightened him. However, that familiar version of Dante is only the surface. Behind the confidence is a child who watched his family disappear, a brother who spent most of his life chasing power, and a man who repeatedly risked everything to protect a human world that never completely understood what he was. Across the Devil May Cry games and their animated adaptations, Dante develops from an angry and reckless young demon hunter into one of the most powerful beings in his universe. His real journey is not simply about gaining strength. It is about deciding what that strength should be used for. To understand Dante, we first need to understand the man whose choices shaped the lives of both Dante and his brother. Long before the twins were born, the human world and the demon world were connected. Demons could cross between the two realms, and the demon emperor Mundus attempted to expand his rule over humanity. Among the warriors associated with the demon world was an extraordinarily powerful demon named Sparda. Sparda was not originally humanity's protector. He was a demon whose strength made him one of the most dangerous beings of his age. However, when Mundus threatened the human world, Sparda rebelled against his own kind. The exact reasons behind this rebellion became part of the legend surrounding him. Humans later remembered Sparda as the legendary Dark Knight, a demon who awakened to justice and chose to defend mankind. Whatever first inspired that decision, Sparda changed the history of both worlds. He defeated Mundus and his armies, sealed the connection between the human and demon realms, and used much of his own power to maintain that separation. He also left behind several weapons and artifacts connected to his strength. These included the blade known as Force Edge, the dimensional katana Yamato, and the sword Rebellion. For centuries, humanity remembered Sparda as a legendary savior. Eventually, Sparda lived among humans and fell in love with a human woman named Eva. Together, they had identical twin sons. One was named Dante, while the other was named Vergil. Although the brothers shared the same blood, they developed completely different relationships with their inheritance. Dante was expressive, emotional, and naturally rebellious. Vergil was quieter, more controlled, and deeply fascinated by the power of their father. Eva gave each brother one half of a magical amulet connected to Sparda's legacy. The matching halves represented the bond between the twins, even as their personalities began moving in opposite directions. For a brief period, they were simply a family. That family was destroyed when demons attacked their home. Eva attempted to protect both of her sons, but she was killed during the attack. Dante survived and believed that Vergil had also died. Vergil survived separately, but the experience affected him in a very different way. Dante remembered the love of his human mother and developed a hatred for the demons responsible for taking her away. Vergil remembered his own helplessness and became convinced that weakness was the true cause of his suffering. From that moment onward, Vergil dedicated himself to gaining enough power that he would never be vulnerable again. The same tragedy, therefore, created two opposing philosophies. Dante held on to the humanity represented by Eva, while Vergil attempted to escape everything he associated with weakness. As Dante grew older, he lived under different identities and began working as a mercenary and demon hunter. For a time, he used the name Tony Redgrave, hiding both his true identity and his connection to Sparda. He carried the sword Rebellion, which had been left to him by his father, and used two customized pistols named Ebony and Ivory. Even before fully awakening his demonic power, Dante possessed abilities far beyond those of a normal human. His strength, speed, and durability allowed him to confront demons directly, while his regenerative abilities helped him survive injuries that should have been fatal. However, the young Dante did not yet understand the full meaning of his inheritance. That began to change when Vergil returned. The earliest main game in the central chronology is Devil May Cry 3. At this point in his life, Dante has not yet officially named his demon-hunting business. He is younger, more reckless, and even more confrontational than the man he later becomes. He fights partly because he enjoys the challenge, and partly because demons are connected to the destruction of his family. However, he has not yet developed a clear sense of responsibility. Vergil, meanwhile, has fully embraced the legacy of Sparda as a source of personal power. Working with a mysterious scholar named Arkham, Vergil raises the enormous demonic tower known as Nero from beneath the city. The tower is connected to an ancient seal separating the human and demon worlds. Vergil believes that opening the gateway will allow him to claim the power that Sparda left behind. He sends an invitation to Dante because the ritual requires both halves of the amulet that Eva gave to her sons. Dante enters the tower and begins fighting his way upward. At first, he treats the entire situation as another opportunity to prove himself. His first major confrontation with Vergil reveals the fundamental difference between the brothers. Dante fights through improvisation, emotion, and instinct, while Vergil fights with discipline, precision, and absolute purpose. Vergil defeats Dante and impales him with rebellion. Instead of killing him, the wound awakens the dormant demonic power inside Dante. For the first time, Dante activates his devil trigger and transforms into a more powerful demonic state. This moment is important because Dante does not awaken his power by rejecting his humanity. His demonic side emerges while he continues fighting for something deeply personal. Both brothers possess extraordinary power, but they understand it in completely different ways. During his climb through Nero, Dante also meets a human demon hunter named Mary. She is pursuing Arkham, who is eventually revealed to be her father. Arkham sacrificed Mary's mother while attempting to gain demonic power, and Mary has dedicated herself to stopping him. Dante initially treats her as another complication. Over time, he recognizes something familiar in her anger. Like Dante, Mary has built much of her identity around the loss of her family. Unlike Dante, she possesses no demonic regeneration and no supernatural inheritance. She is entirely human, yet she willingly enters battles that could easily kill her. Through Mary, Dante begins to understand that humanity is not defined by physical weakness. It is defined by the courage to continue despite that weakness. Vergil and Dante eventually fight again, but Arkham reveals that he has manipulated both brothers. Using their amulets, Mary's blood, and the power of the tower, Arkham opens the gateway and claims Force Edge, the sword containing Sparda's sealed power. For a brief time, Dante and Vergil fight together. Their cooperation demonstrates how overwhelming their combined strength could be if they ever shared the same purpose. Together, they defeat Arkham and recover their father's sword. However, the alliance immediately ends when Vergil attempts to claim that power for himself. The brothers confront one another for a final time inside the demon world. By this point, Dante understands that the legacy of Sparda is not simply a collection of weapons and supernatural abilities. Sparda became great because he chose to protect others. Vergil still believes that power alone is the answer to every form of suffering. Dante wins the battle. As the gateway begins to close, Vergil refuses Dante's attempt to save him. He chooses to remain behind and falls into the darkness, declaring that the demon world was once their father's home. Dante returns to the human world, where Mary discovers him grieving for his brother. She notices a tear on his face and explains that even a devil may cry when he loses someone he loves. That idea gives Dante's new business its name. He calls it Devil May Cry. Mary also leaves her birth name behind and begins using the name Lady, which was originally a nickname given to her by Dante. Their relationship never becomes a traditional romance, but it develops into one of the most enduring partnerships in Dante's life. Lady represents the human courage that Dante chooses to protect. Vergil's story does not end with his fall into the demon world. Already exhausted from his battle with Dante, Vergil challenges Mundus and is defeated. Mundus corrupts him and transforms him into an armored servant named Nello Angelo. Years later, that transformation becomes central to the events of the original Devil May Cry. By this point, Dante is an established demon hunter. He operates from his shop, accepts supernatural assignments, and has developed the older version of the personality for which he becomes famous. He remains sarcastic and theatrical, but beneath that performance is a man who has already lost his mother and, as far as he knows, his brother. A mysterious woman named Trish suddenly enters Dante's office and attacks him. She possesses supernatural strength and looks almost exactly like Eva. Trish tells Dante that Mundus is preparing to return on Mallet Island. Because Mundus is connected to the destruction of his family, Dante agrees to follow her. The resemblance between Trish and Eva is not accidental. Mundus created Trish in Eva's image so that she could manipulate Dante. Her appearance forces Dante to confront the memory of his mother while entering a trap designed by the demon responsible for destroying his family. On Mallet Island, Dante encounters the armored warrior Nero Angelo. Their first encounters appear to be battles between two powerful warriors. However, Nero Angelo reacts to Dante's half of the amulet, and the truth gradually becomes clear. Nero Angelo is Vergil. The brother Dante failed to save has been transformed into the servant of their family's greatest enemy. Dante is forced to confront him repeatedly. When Nero Angelo is finally defeated, he leaves behind the other half of Eva's amulet. The completed amulet reacts with Force Edge and awakens the sword's true form as the legendary blade Sparda. Vergil disappears, and Dante is once again left without his brother. Trish eventually betrays Dante as Mundus intended, but Dante saves her despite knowing what she is. He does not spare her simply because she resembles Eva. He saves her because he refuses to allow Mundus to decide who deserves compassion. That choice changes Trish. When Mundus later attempts to kill Dante, Trish protects him and appears to sacrifice herself. Dante then confronts Mundus, using the power of Sparda, and succeeds in defeating him. Trish survives, but Dante makes it clear that she cannot truly replace his mother. Eva was human not merely because of her appearance, but because she possessed a human heart. When Trish cries, Dante recognizes that she has developed the same capacity for emotion and compassion. She eventually becomes his partner. The original Devil May Cry transforms Dante from a man focused on avenging his family into someone capable of creating a new family around himself. Lady and Trish do not replace the people he lost. Instead, they prove that his life did not end with those losses. The Devil May Cry anime, released in 2007, takes place within the general continuity of the original games. It is commonly positioned after Dante's confrontation with Mundus and before some of his later adventures. Unlike most of the games, the anime does not focus on a single enormous campaign. Instead, it shows Dante's everyday life as a professional demon hunter. He accepts assignments, investigates supernatural incidents, and struggles constantly with debt. He enjoys pizza and strawberry sundaes, avoids paperwork, and often appears financially irresponsible. He is also surrounded by people who understand him far better than he admits. Lady frequently demands the money that he owes her. Trish appears whenever her own travels bring her back into Dante's life. Morrison helps him find clients and organize jobs. A young girl named Patty Lowell also becomes attached to Dante after he protects her during a demonic incident. Patty is important because she reveals a quieter and more domestic side of Dante. He complains about her presence and pretends to be irritated, but he repeatedly protects her and gradually allows her to become part of his daily life. Around Patty, Dante behaves less like an untouchable legendary warrior and more like an exhausted older brother who does not know how to express affection directly. The anime presents a Dante who is often calmer and more withdrawn than the younger man seen in Devil May Cry 3. This does not necessarily contradict the games. It reflects a period in which Dante has already lost Vergil again, defeated Mundus, and settled into a repetitive life of hunting lesser demons. His boredom and financial problems conceal a deeper isolation. Most of the enemies he encounters are not serious threats to him. The central question is rarely whether Dante can win. The more important issue is whether he can preserve the ordinary human lives caught in each conflict. The anime eventually introduces a demon named Cid, who manipulates events in order to obtain the power of the demon Abigail. After gaining that power, Cid becomes strong enough to challenge Dante. However, he still fails to understand the source of Dante's true strength. Dante's power does not come only from his demonic blood. It is also connected to the human relationships that Cid dismisses. Dante defeats him and returns to his familiar life, where unpaid bills, damaged property, and arguments with his friends continue as though the battle never happened. This version of Dante complements the games because it shows what happens between world-ending crises. It presents the smaller cases, the routine victories, and the strange domestic life of someone who can defeat demon kings but cannot keep his office financially stable. The next major event in Dante's life is Devil May Cry 2. Dante travels to the island of V.D. Marley and meets a demon hunter named Lucia. She is connected to a protective clan that defends the island from demonic threats. The island is endangered by Arius, a wealthy businessman and occultist who intends to summon the ancient demon Argosax. Lucia initially believes that she is human, but she eventually discovers that Arius created her as an artificial demon. This revelation causes her to question whether her life and identity possess any real meaning. Dante has already encountered the same question through Trish. Trish was created by Mundus, yet she chose to protect Dante. Dante himself is the son of a demon, yet he has spent his life defending humanity. Lucia's origin therefore matters less than the choices she makes. Dante helps stop Arius and eventually prepares to enter the demon world in order to confront Argosax. He appears to decide who should enter by flipping a coin. Lucia later discovers that both sides of the coin are identical. Dante never intended to leave the decision to chance. He had already decided that he would accept the danger himself. This is one of the clearest examples of the responsibility hidden beneath his detached personality. Dante often behaves as though nothing matters, but when someone must accept the most dangerous role, he quietly chooses himself. He defeats Argosax inside the demon world and eventually finds a way to return. Dante appears more distant and less talkative in Devil May Cry 2 than he does in most other entries. This difference partly reflects the distinct direction of that game, but within the broader character arc, it can also be understood as another period in which Dante retreats emotionally and allows his actions to speak for him. Devil May Cry 4 introduces a new central character and changes Dante's role within the story. The events take place in Fortuna, a city controlled by a religious organization called the Order of the Sword. The Order worships Sparda as a divine savior, but its leaders secretly experiment with demonic power. A young knight named Nero serves the Order. Nero possesses a supernatural right arm called the Devil Bringer, but he hides its demonic nature. He cares deeply for Kyrie, whose brother Credo is one of the Order's commanders. During a public ceremony, Dante enters the cathedral and shoots Sanctus, the leader of the Order. From Nero's perspective, Dante appears to be a murderer attacking a sacred institution. Nero fights him and demonstrates strength that immediately catches Dante's attention. During their confrontation, Dante notices that Nero carries a familiar kind of power. Dante understands more than he explains. Sanctus is revived through demonic means, proving that the Order has corrupted the legacy it claims to honor. Its scientists, including Agnus, use demonic power to create artificial soldiers and open gateways between realms. Nero eventually discovers the broken katana Yamato, the weapon that once belonged to Vergil. When Nero's power restores the blade, the connection between them becomes impossible to ignore. Yamato responds to Nero, because Nero is Vergil's son. Devil May Cry 4 strongly implies this relationship, while later, material confirms it. Nero is Dante's nephew and the continuation of the family that Vergil believed he had lost. Dante could have claimed Yamato for himself. The sword belonged to his brother, and its ability to divide dimensions makes it one of the most important weapons in the series. Instead, Dante allows Nero to keep it. That decision reveals how much Dante has changed since Devil May Cry 3. The younger Dante fought Vergil over their father's power. The older Dante understands that inheritance cannot be measured only through ownership. Yamato has responded to Nero, and Dante respects that connection. The Order captures both Nero and Kyrie, intending to use Nero's blood and demonic power to activate an enormous construct called the Savior. Sanctus plans to create a demonic crisis and then present himself as the divine protector who can rescue the population. Dante and Trish begin dismantling the Order's plan, while Nero fights from inside the Savior. Dante ultimately gives Nero the opportunity to defeat Sanctus himself. For the first time, Dante is no longer the only hero capable of deciding the outcome. Nero saves Kyrie, rejects the shame surrounding his demonic arm, and accepts that his power can be used to protect the people he loves. In many ways, Nero reaches the conclusion that Vergil never could. Demonic blood does not remove his humanity. It gives him another way to express it. Before leaving Fortuna, Dante gives Yamato to Nero. Although he does not openly explain their family connection, his expression suggests that he already understands it. For perhaps the first time, Dante sees that something of Vergil has survived outside their endless conflict. Years later, Devil May Cry 5 brings every part of the family's history back together. The story begins when a mysterious man named V hires Dante, Lady, and Trish to stop a powerful demon king called Urizen. Nero has also created a mobile branch of Devil May Cry and works alongside a weapons engineer named Nico. Before the main conflict, a weakened stranger attacks Nero and tears away the Devil Bringer. The arm contained Yamato, and the stranger uses the restored sword for a devastating purpose. The stranger is Vergil, after years of corruption, defeat, and physical collapse. Vergil has returned, but his body is failing. Still obsessed with overcoming weakness, he uses Yamato's ability to separate one thing from another. Vergil divides himself into two beings. Urizen contains his demonic power and his obsessive desire for strength, while V contains his human side along with the memories, regret, and vulnerability that Vergil spent his life rejecting. This division transforms Vergil's internal conflict into two physical characters. Urizen raises the demonic Clifteeth tree inside Redgrave City. The tree feeds on human blood and produces a fruit capable of granting enormous demonic power. Dante confronts Urizen but is defeated. Lady and Trish are captured and used as living cores for demonic creatures, while Dante is thrown away from the battlefield and remains unconscious for several weeks. V recruits Nero and guides him through the devastated city. Nero now uses mechanical Devil Breaker arms created by Nico. He has lost the physical source of the power on which he once relied, but he continues fighting. His journey mirrors Dante's awakening in Devil May Cry 3, because both characters are forced to discover that their strength was never limited to a single weapon or body part. When Dante awakens, he returns to his childhood home and finds the shattered remains of rebellion. He realizes that Yamato possesses the ability to separate. While rebellion may represent the opposite principle, Dante drives the broken sword into his own body while carrying the sword Sparda. Instead of dying, he merges rebellion, Sparda, and his own power into a new weapon called Devil Sword Dante. The transformation also unlocks Sin Devil Trigger, a much more powerful demonic form. This moment represents the complete opposite of Vergil's decision. Vergil attempts to become stronger by dividing himself and rejecting his humanity. Dante becomes stronger by uniting every part of himself, including his human emotions, his demonic inheritance, the pain of his past, and the responsibility he has chosen to carry. Dante defeats Urizen even after Urizen consumes the fruit of the Clifford. However, V is close to death and asks Dante to allow him to deliver the final blow. Instead of killing Urizen, V merges with him. Vergil is restored. For Dante, the revelation changes both everything and nothing. He has spent years carrying the loss of his brother, but Vergil now stands before him once again and remains driven by the same need to prove his superiority. Vergil and Dante prepare for another final battle. Nero eventually learns the truth about his family. Vergil is his father. Dante initially attempts to prevent Nero from becoming involved. Part of his reason is that Vergil is extraordinarily dangerous. Dante also believes that killing one's own father would become an unbearable burden for Nero. However, Nero refuses to accept the idea that the brothers must destroy one another. He remembers Credo, whom he failed to save in Fortuna, and decides that he will not lose another member of his family. That emotional decision awakens Nero's true devil trigger. His human arm regenerates, and he develops a complete demonic transformation that no longer depends on the devil bringer. Nero interrupts the duel and defeats Vergil. More importantly, he forces Dante and Vergil to stop repeating the same conflict. The Qliphoth must still be destroyed from inside the demon world, so Dante and Vergil travel there together. They cut down the tree and remain behind as the portal closes, leaving Nero responsible for protecting the human world. Inside the demon realm, the twins continue fighting, but the meaning of their rivalry has changed. Their competition remains, yet it no longer carries the same hatred and desperation. Vergil has acknowledged Nero and promised to return, while Dante has finally recovered the brother he believed he had lost several times. They remain stubborn, competitive, and almost incapable of expressing affection normally, but they are together. For Dante, this is the closest thing to reconciliation that the main series has ever given him. There is also another major video game interpretation of Dante that exists outside the central continuity. DMC, Devil May Cry, is a complete reboot built around a different version of the world and its characters. In this universe, Dante is not simply half human and half demon. He is a Nephilim born from the demon Sparda and the angel Eva. Demons secretly control human society through media, surveillance, debt, and consumer products. This Dante begins as an isolated and openly rebellious young man who understands very little about his past. Vergil leads an organization called the Order and recruits Dante to fight the demon king Mundus. The reboot preserves the central concept of two brothers who were shaped differently by the loss of their family, but it changes their personalities and the structure of their conflict. Dante gradually becomes more responsible as he learns about his parents and begins caring about humanity. Vergil initially presents himself as a revolutionary leader, but after Mundus is defeated, he reveals that he believes the Nephilim brothers should rule humanity. Dante refuses to accept that belief. Their final conflict once again focuses on the meaning of power. Vergil sees power as proof that he deserves control, while Dante sees it as a responsibility to defend freedom. The reboot ends with the brothers separated and Vergil beginning his own descent into darkness. Although this story uses familiar names, weapons, and themes, it does not occur within the same continuity as the original games. Its Dante is a reinterpretation, rather than a younger version of the central character. The Netflix animated series also presents a separate adaptation. This distinction is essential because the Netflix story rearranges characters, events, and political ideas from the games, instead of recreating the established game chronology. In the first season, Dante is once again a demon hunter for hire, who possesses one half of Sparda's amulet. A demonic terrorist known as the White Rabbit attempts to unite the amulet with Force Edge and break the barrier separating the human and demon realms. Dante becomes a target of Darkcom, a government-backed organization created to confront demonic threats. Its forces include Marianne Arkham, who serves as this adaptation's version of Lady. Unlike the lady introduced in Devil May Cry 3, this Mary begins as a disciplined soldier who distrusts demons and initially sees Dante as another dangerous creature. Dante himself knows relatively little about his origins and resists accepting his demonic nature. The White Rabbit's plan forces Dante to discover that he is the son of Sparda and that the amulet inherited from Eva is connected to the seal between worlds. During the conflict, Dante awakens more of his demonic power, while Mary gradually discovers that the institutions she serves are not morally pure. The White Rabbit remains an enemy, but his hatred is connected to violence committed by humans against demons. This gives the conflict more political complexity than the direct invasion led by Mundus in the original game. The first season concludes with the barrier damaged, a larger conflict beginning, and the revelation that Vergil is still alive. This version of Vergil has a different history from the character in the games. The Netflix series uses familiar imagery and themes, but it changes his relationship with Mundus and reworks his role within the demon world. The second Netflix season brings Dante and Vergil into direct conflict while expanding the history of Sparda, Mundus, and the demonic realm. Dante is forced to confront the brother he believed he had lost, while Vergil sees himself as the person capable of completing what Sparda failed to accomplish. The reunion briefly creates the possibility that they might finally act as brothers, but their philosophies remain incompatible. The Netflix version of Dante remains impulsive, emotional, and protective, while Vergil continues to be driven by purpose, resentment, and the pursuit of strength. The adaptation therefore preserves the central contrast from the games even while changing the events around it. By the end of the second season, Vergil defeats Dante and sends him through a portal. Vergil remains behind to pursue Mundus and claim control of the demon realm. Their conflict is not yet complete, and a third season is intended to conclude this version of the story. The animated Dante combines elements from several versions of the character. He possesses the rebellious immaturity associated with Devil May Cry 3, the family trauma connected to the original game, and some of the anti-authoritarian energy associated with the reboot. However, he is not designed to fit between any two Capcom games. He is a new version of Dante created from familiar parts of the larger franchise. The anime released in 2007 and the Netflix series therefore serve completely different purposes. The older anime expands the everyday life of the Dante from the central game continuity. It assumes that the established history of Sparda, Vergil, Mundus, Trish, and Lady has already occurred. The Netflix series retells and restructures that mythology. It creates a different world, changes how the characters meet, and introduces a new sequence of events. The older anime supplements the games, while the Netflix adaptation reinterprets them. Despite all these variations, nearly every version of Dante shares the same fundamental traits. He possesses superhuman strength, speed, reflexes, and durability. His demonic blood allows him to recover from extreme injuries, while his devil trigger releases a much more powerful demonic form. He is highly skilled with swords, firearms, and almost every supernatural weapon he acquires. Within the main games, his combat ability becomes increasingly versatile. Rebellion serves as the weapon most closely connected to Dante's identity. Ebony and ivory allow him to maintain constant pressure from a distance. The sword Sparda connects him to the legacy of his father, while Devil's Sword Dante represents his ability to create something new from that inheritance. His combat styles also express his adaptability. Trickster emphasizes movement and evasion. Swordmaster expands his close-range techniques. Gunslinger improves his abilities with firearms. Royal Guard allows him to block, absorb, and redirect enormous force. Dante does not simply overpower his opponents. He studies them, improvises, and transforms combat into a form of personal expression. Vergil seeks perfect technique, while Dante embraces unlimited possibility. Dante's humor is also an essential part of his character. His jokes are not proof that he has never suffered. They are one of the ways in which he refuses to allow suffering to control the atmosphere around him. He mocks enemies who want to appear terrifying, undermines their authority, and turns fear into entertainment. The more powerful and self-important an enemy becomes, the less seriously Dante appears to treat it. However, when someone he loves is threatened, that emotional mask changes. He grieves for Vergil, protects Trish, trusts Lady Guides Nero, and accepts the most dangerous assignments, even when nobody would blame him for walking away. Dante's deepest contradiction is that he behaves like a man who cares about nothing, while repeatedly proving that he cares more than he is willing to admit. Vergil remains the most important relationship in Dante's life, because he represents everything Dante could have become. Both brothers lost Eva. Both inherited the power of Sparda. Both were traumatized by helplessness. Vergil concluded that humanity was a weakness that needed to be overcome. Dante concluded that humanity was the reason strength mattered. Their battles are therefore more than competitions between two warriors. They are arguments about the meaning of their father's legacy. Vergil wants to possess the power of Sparda, while Dante attempts to understand the choice that made Sparda a hero. Nero eventually provides the answer that neither brother could reach alone. Nero possesses Vergil's blood and shares Dante's instinct to protect others. He accepts his demonic power without worshipping it, and values his human relationships without seeing them as vulnerabilities. When Nero stops Dante and Vergil from killing one another, the next generation finally interrupts the cycle created by Eva's death. Dante begins his story believing that he is alone. He believes that his mother is gone, his father is only a legend, and his brother is dead. Over time, he finds Lady, Trish, Morrison, Patty, Nero, and eventually Vergil again. His family does not return in the form he expected, but he is no longer the isolated child who survived the attack on his home. Across every game and animated adaptation, Dante remains recognizable because of the red coat, the sword, the pistols, and the attitude. However, those things are not the true source of his strength. His greatest power is his refusal to let tragedy decide what kind of man he will become. Vergil spends most of his life attempting to escape weakness. Dante accepts that loss, love, and grief are part of his identity. He does not become strong by removing his humanity. He becomes strong enough to confront the demon world because he refuses to abandon it. This is the complete story of Dante, the son of Sparda, the brother of Vergil, and the uncle of Nero. He is a demon who chose humanity, and the reason that even a devil may cry,